I think I'm live. I hope I'm live. I think I'm live. If not, we gonna keep going forward anyways. Good afternoon. I hope that it has been a pleasant weekend for Facebook family and friends. Today is Sunday, 10th of August, the day before the first day of classes for the county that my family lives in, K through 12 schools. And it's been a fleeting summer, a fast summer, but a good summer. And as I'm talking about children and going back to school, I know my nephew started a week or a couple weeks ago in the Georgia school systems. And I truly hope that folks are not just praying about the first week and praying on the first day, but continuing to cover and smother our children, the teachers, faculty, administrators, folks who are preparing and delivering the lunch, folks doing the landscaping, everybody. My hope is that every day, those who are able, those who are in the body of Christ, are covering folks that go out every day and pour, however they pour. It can be K through 12, it can be firefighters, librarians, whomever. Let's make sure that we are intentionally covering our people, your local cities, your states, your counties, not just the nation, not just during the first exciting days of school. But today we are going to continue to do some read throughs. I'm going to share some takeaways based on what I've learned, what I'm learning, what stood out. We are in chapters 21 through 25 of First Samuel. And David is on the scene. He has yet to be officially established in the land as the king of Israel. Right now, King Saul is still in place, and he is continuing to hunt David down because he cannot accept what the Lord God has told him. He cannot accept what Samuel, the high priest of the time, has told him about him not being the one. The Benjamites are not going to be the groupings of people, the clan of the entire tribe of Israel in which Yeshua, Christ Jesus lineage will come through, in which the kingdom will be established forever. It is going to be tribe of Judah, and it has a lot to do with God already trying to tell the people, let me be your king of kings. You don't need a king. And the people saying, no, Lord, we want a physical person on the earth with us to, be over us. And then God told them, look, you do understand. People are a hot mess. People with power. It's not going to be what you think it's going to be. It's going to bring more trouble than a little bit. And the people continue to say they wanted a king. So fast forward, the Lord says, Samuel, go ahead. This is the one. Go get him. And then Saul just ends up doing what Saul does to the fault. And God is like, yeah, I can't rock with you because you keep doing what you want to do. So now we're in a place where Saul has been told multiple times from the Lord himself, from the high priest, and through the people's song that David is that guy. David is going to be king. So that's where we are. And again, First Samuel chapter 21, as far as what I wrote down as a takeaway, so I can kind of center myself. Verses 5 through 9 is what initially stood out, and it's when David is continuously working hard to keep away from Saul. He's hiding, he's ducking, he's moving, and then he gets to the point to where he goes in a particular city, and it's called Nob, and he runs into the priest of that town called Ahimelech. And long story short, David lies because who David is and who he represents, like his reputation precedes him, right? So he lies to the priest Ahimelech and says like, hey, I'm in town on King's business. That's why you didn't get the heads up. I need you to run me some bread. And by the way, do you have a sword? That's how the story goes in chapter 21. And Ahimelech is like, I'm so used to kind of being prepared for you, right? Because I will have what you need. All I have is holy bread, the show bread, right? And we just kind of shifted over. The old is being removed from the temple customs expectations, right? And then we brought in the new show bread. But I can give you this showbread. And instead of David telling the truth of saying, man, I'm running for my life because the King Saul is trying to kill me, he tells the story and was like, hey, I'm here. You got some bread. Like, this is what my man need. Y'all know David is a man of war. He is being entrusted by King Saul not only to be his armor bearer, but to go out and get the victory. Battle after battle after battle. Saul recognizes that David is anointed. God is on David's side. No hurt, harm, or danger is coming to David, even though Saul is putting him purposefully in situations where, in his mind, right, just walking by sight, oh yeah, David ain't gonna make it out of this one. And again, God protects, covers, gives David the victory. But long story short, Saul has blatantly said, yeah, I gotta kill him. He's a threat to my kingdom. I know that if he continues to live, I'm already losing the people's favor. Like, what God said is going to come to pass, as if Saul could change it, but here we are, right? But long story short, priest Ahimelech, he trusts David. So he says, here's a showbread, and you asked me for weapons. The only thing I got is I got Goliath's sword. So if you want Goliath's sword, that's all I have. You can have it. And David now has food and something to protect himself because again, he's constantly running, hiding from Saul and the folks that are on Saul's side who essentially are trying to kill David to take him out of the equation due to jealousy, discomfort. King Saul can't let go of the fact that he is about to be usurped or overtaken. He's no longer going to be king. So that's where we at. But verses 5 through 9, if you wanted to read like the specificity, is what I kind of gave the long short version about of what occurred. Now verses 10 through 15 of chapter 21, David he's continuing to be out here. In my mind, he's doing the most. He's trying to preserve his life because he understands that he is seen as a threat. The downside of it is based on people really just trusting that David is a good man and he knows, again, they know that King Saul loves him. They don't know the full story of where things are with King Saul's heart and mind. They're trusting David and essentially making provisions for David, but they are not recognizing that they're setting themselves up for harm to be done to them. And that's the sad reality of what occurs in some of the additional chapters. But David is out here doing the most to prevent Saul from finding him. And it's making matters worse for the people who are looking after him and his man because he's already, again, he's seen as a threat. But again, there's this alliance. There's people who know and people who don't know, which is how the story goes back and forth up until I think chapter 25 when peace is made. But those are the things that kind of stood out in 1 Samuel chapter 21 for me in particular. Verses 5 through 9, then 10 through 15 on two separate occasions. And then chapter 22, it was a good deal of verses that stood out, but what I wrote was Saul doesn't have everyone willing to ride or die for him. He asks his guards to kill priest Ahimelech. He comes into town because the people have gotten word to Saul that, hey, David hiding over here. You ain't know? And let me tell you, priest Ahimelech has given him this, that, and this man, right? And they ready. They ready for you, right? They're gearing up to overtake, right? So King Saul is upset. He goes into town and then he tells the people off. He was like, y'all are not loyal to me. Y'all are sitting here keeping this information to yourself and allowing somebody who's quote unquote an enemy of the state live his best life and then get prepared to take me, right? To take me down. So what I'm going to do, I'm killing all y'all. And that's how King Saul felt. But King Saul didn't do it himself. He said the word. Unfortunately, when he said kill the priests, King Saul's guards was like, I can't do that. So they would not listen to him because they understood and they feared God more, as well as the priests. They understand who the priests are in the town, right? And what a high priest means to God's order. So King Saul sees it. He's angry about it. He then tells the Edomite who brought word to King Saul that he saw David. He said, hey, his name is Doeg, you kill him. And Doeg, clearly a man of ambition, he struck down 85 priests, folks who wore the ephod or ephod, which is the garb for folks who have consecrated their lives unto the Lord, and they're doing things a certain type of way, high stature. He struck down 85 of them, y'all, and didn't stop there. He killed men, women, children, infant. He killed everybody with no remorse because of King Saul's frustration. And we know why. You think of greed. You think of what he's thinking he's going to get out of this. I don't gave report about what David is, and now I get to be the person to allow for King Saul to get his vengeance, right? And to be justified. But this person, his name is Doeg again, he killed everybody, including livestock. I was like, my mouth dropped. 'Cause I was like, man, that's just straight heartless. And it was very clear that that action meant in his mind, it set me up for something better, right? I'm gonna be on the right side of history by following the current king's command. But verses 8 through 23, hard but good regarding what went down and why it went down, are the things that I in particular highlighted. And then what happens with priest Ahimelech, they thought that they snuffed out his whole family because that's the custom, right? You're disrespectful to high authority. They essentially eliminate your whole bloodline. So your sons, your daughter, everybody that could carry on your name, like that's the ultimate disrespect to not follow the king of the land or the way of the land. Cut it all off. And that's God's way of thinking and moving as well. Cut it all off. But long story short, they thought they did, but one of Priest's son, his name was, I think Abiathar, Abiathar, yeah. Verse 21, he flees, he gets word to David. David is very grieved by the new information of realizing the people who looked out for me because I didn't tell the whole truth, their whole town is now been null and void. All the priests cut down. But David was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Abiathar. But you know what? You stay by my side. You stick with me. I'm not going to allow no harm to come to you. Right. I'm sorry that this has happened, but like the least I can do, right? Because you escaped, you ran and told me what happened, and it's on me, right? He was making matters worse without realizing it's always somebody watching. So that's what it was. David thought he was being stealth, hiding around, getting provisions when he was hungry and his men were hungry. But again, he didn't realize that Edomite Doeg he saw and then reported it to King Saul. But that's how 1 Samuel 22 kind of wrapped up. Saul is on the continual manhunt of David, and now he got somebody that is just as ruthless and ambitious, that's willing to do what needs to be done to give him whatever this peace of mind looks like. Now going to 1 Samuel chapter 23, I really, really love verses 1 through 5, so I'm going to read it since for like the first two chapters I've kind of given a synopsis and some verses for y'all to read and check out for yourselves to see and ask questions and make comments whenever you view this if it's not being viewed in the live. But what I'm going to do now is read 1 Samuel chapter 23 verses 1 through 5, and it reads, Then they told David, saying, Look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah, and they are robbing the threshing floors. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go and attack these Philistines? And the Lord said to David, Go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah. But David's man said to him, Look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines? Then David inquired of the Lord once again, and the Lord answered him and said, Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into your hand. And David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines or Philistines, struck them with a mighty blow and took away their livestock. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. I'm going to stop there. What I loved about this is David wasn't impulsive, right? And what we've noticed so far with a few folks in God's word, them being quick to move and slow to seek God gets them in trouble. Even as a child of God, the expectation is once you get some information, seek God about it. And that's what stood out when I did read 1 through 5. I was like, shout out to David. In this season, he's not impulsive. He got the bad report about the city of Keilah being overtaken by the Philistines. And instead of him saying, come on, y'all, let's go make it right. Because again, David has a reputation. They know what he can do. He was like, let me see God. He sees God. He hears what God has to say. And then when he notices that the man who was supposed to have his back and ride with him are like, man, it's a lot going on. You saw what just happened in Nob. Like, how much worse is it going to become when we keep making noise, right? You're making a name for yourself if we go to Keilah. So he seeks God once again, which is what I love. He didn't get in an argument with them. He didn't try to like pump his chest and say, I already said what needed to be done because God told me. Sought God again, then he told him what the Lord said. And the Lord doubled down and was like, you good. Yeah, like justice will come. It's going to be okay. Nobody's going to overtake you because I think that was the fear. Like, you know how many it is? Are we sure we want to do this? Long story short, he goes in, the people of Keilah, and he delivers them out of the hand of the Philistines. He strike them all down. As the Lord said what happened. Now, when we keep reading, we will learn that even though David got them out of danger, right? Got them out of whatever oppression was coming to them losing out of what was theirs from the Philistines. When we keep reading in the same chapter, David runs into news getting out again back to Saul about where he at. He's in Keilah and what he's going to do. And initially David's like, the people of Keilah have my back because of what I and my man did. They're not gonna tell. Instead of him moving forward with that assumption, what does David do again in chapter 23? David consults the Lord, and the Lord flat out tells him, yeah, you did a good thing. I told you that it would be handled. Like, I kept my word, but I tell you this, they still gonna tell on you. They gonna rat you out because they heard what happened at Nob. They don't want to be like the city of Nob, even though you did a good thing, right? And you delivered them out of the hand of the Philistines. They will deliver you up to Saul, and Saul gonna kill you. So long story short, David listens to the Lord, and him and his man, they leave Keilah because what happens is what they said. Somebody was like, hey, King Saul, David over here in Keilah. So Saul goes, and if David wasn't obedient to, again, bowing his face before the Lord and consulting God about what he should do, he would have been overtaken. So shout out to him for being obedient. And I thought it was real cool to read some of those things, particularly verses 6 through 12. But yeah, God told him, yeah, Saul gonna come, and if you stay here, they're gonna deliver you into the hands of Saul, and he gonna kill you. Another thing that I wrote was from verse 14, and I'll read it really quickly. But verse 14 of chapter 23 reads, and David stayed in strongholds in the wilderness and remained in the mountains in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul sought him every day, but God did not deliver him into his hands. I sat on that when I read it because I don't think the hardest thing to realize is that God's sovereignty is not always a, ooh, it feels good type of thing, right? So what I'm saying is God protects us and God delivers us into some what we perceive as messed up situations, right? What we perceive as failures, what we perceive as just hard, tumultuous time. But it doesn't mean that God doesn't love us, right? But I said in that because I was like, oh, it said that God did not deliver, which means that God does deliver, which means that some of the things we instinctively believe is from the devil, of the devil, God is still God. God is still sovereign. God is still all powerful, right? But I think sometimes believers struggle with identifying that God would do that. And what it had me thinking about instinctively was a Job story, right? Where the enemy doing his job was like, man, Job only loyal to you because you don't protect him from everything. You don't let him go out there and get into no trouble. You don't let no trouble come to him. And then God was like, you know what? I'll remove this hedge of protection just to prove to you that Job is an humble, faithful servant. He is not going to forsake me if some bad does happen to him. And for those who read the story of Job, whoo, he lost it all, right? Some of the worst of the worst of the worst that you could think happened to Job. And Job questioned God. And Job was real with God about how he was feeling about his children dying, his women dying, his wife dying, everything that he owned been stripped away, catching boils, out here houseless, right? Friends looking at you trying to figure out what wrong did you do to deserve this, because you had to do something, Job. Because ain't no way that our God would allow something like this to happen to his child. And the truth of the matter is, God can do that. God does do that, but it doesn't mean that he's not God. And it's not an easy thing to say, and it's definitely not an easy thing to experience. But I think that's why I sat with 1 Samuel chapter 23, verse 14 so long, because I was like, God does protect us, and God can deliver us into the hands of folks who seek to do us harm. But he's still God, and his plan is still in action. So that's what like really stood out when I read that. And all that did was just continue to prompt prayer and praise, because for those who are on this faith walk, we understand that there are going to be mountain highs and there are going to be valley lows. Shout out to Yolanda Adams. And there's going to be hard things, right? But as long as the desire and the hope is to want to be where God is, and to trust his plan, even though we don't understand it, and even though we don't like the process of what it means to be refined. Anything in its natural state being refined goes through a lot of heat, like a lot of uncomfortable elements and situations to be purified. And God is gracious in giving us those examples to see, so that when we come through the journey of life and start to feel it, we know where we're going. Break through, right? Getting to what it is. And to God be the glory and all of that, even though we're like, whew, I don't know, God, I ain't feeling this. But that was my long soliloquy on the verse 14 of chapter 23. Moving to verses 15 through 18, Jonathan, which is like a brother to David. For y'all that don't remember, Jonathan is one of King Saul's sons. And King Saul is livid with his son because he's essentially telling him, you rocking with him like he's still your brother is a problem, because David is supposed to be you. You can't rock with him because that means that you will never be heir. Right? Matter of fact, in Saul's mind, David's gonna kill you as soon as he get in power, because you are a threat. You are a reminder of who I am and what I represent, the kingdom that I have, right? But Jonathan has made a covenant with David. David has made a covenant with Jonathan. They are like blood brothers and thick as thieves. Jonathan out here sliding food and provisions, him and David's men, because he out here running. He don't have a comfortable house to lay his head down, right? He don't have heat. He don't have to find his wine. They out here like legit in the wilderness, probably sleeping with one eye open, right? But since it's a camp of men, they're taking turns to protect in case the danger comes. But Jonathan is a true friend and a believer in God Almighty, according to verses 15 and 18. And I'm going to read it because those are like those stories of hope that kind of make you smile, when even though somebody's in a situation of needing to be loyal to family or whatever they're beholden to, if it is in the way of God and they choose God, to me, like that's the way to go, which is why that really stuck out. But chapter 23 still, verses 15 through 18 reads, so David saw that Saul had come out to seek his life, and David was in the wilderness of Ziph in a forest. Then Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the woods and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, Do not fear, for the hand of Saul, my father, shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Even my father Saul knows that. So the two of them made a covenant before the Lord, and David stayed in the woods, and Jonathan went to his own house. So Jonathan out here checking in on the homie, again, strengthening his hand. What you need: food, water, clothing. Y'all got what y'all need. Speaking life into him to remind him, I know what the Lord said. You know what the Lord said, right? I know my dad ain't rocking with it. He's not trying to receive it, but I am going to be your right hand man, and I'm okay. So Jonathan doesn't even have this prideful complex that gets in the way of him being able to trust God, which I thought was a beautiful thing to see. So going to verses, I guess we do 19 through 28. What I noticed here that stood out was David stayed on the run because folks kept telling Saul where he was hiding. That is the story of those first couple of chapters that we're reading today. He constantly has to move because of who he is, what he represents. He's not a nobody, right? So he just can't move through with his group without people noticing and going back and telling Saul. Because when you think about it, they know what King Saul did to all the people in Nob and to the high priest. So I can only imagine like their fear, them being uneasy about keeping that secret if they saw where David was hiding, right? Because if somebody else saw it and then said, "Oh, they saw it too," that's a off with your head, right? And your whole family, everything you own, taken away from you. So it's like I understand, and I know that it was meant to be to strengthen David's reliance on the Most High God, as well as allow for the story to be what it needed to be, for Saul to get to the point that he ultimately gets to, and we'll see some back and forth in that. Yay, being a human being. But y'all will see as we keep reading. But verses 19 through 28 is the back and forth of every time David moves to a different town or a different spot, different city, somebody sees him, somebody tells Saul. Saul is back and forth because he has a kingdom to protect. He has king things to do. So I really liked seeing that he wasn't so obsessed with David that he forgot to take care of house and home. Because when you think about it, the reality of it is God's people have taken a lot from many others, but they have not eliminated all of those bloodlines. So you still got the Gerzites, the Amorites, the Amalekites, the Philistines. You have all these people that's waiting for opportunity. And that's what you see as you continue to read through the Old Testament as well. Like whenever Saul had his attention thwarted, there were a few folks who like, hey, we got an opportunity, right? But because people are doing their job, which is the importance of order, right, and then trust, they're making sure reports are where they need to get to in real time so that nobody's leaving their front door open and no security. So there are some situations that you'll see where Saul can't keep relentlessly hunting down David. He got to get back to, again, keep everything in order with the kingdom that he is responsible over. Saul is still chosen by God to do what he's doing as king. If he wasn't, Saul would have been eliminated. That just is what it is. But he is not going to be the king for as long as he wants to, because of his inability to allow for God to be God in his life, to be the Lord over his life. So that's why Saul is in his situation. But David keep running because folks keep telling. And then verses 27 and 28 in the chapter 24, I wrote, even though Saul was fixated on finding and killing David, I already said it, he went too obsessed that he forgot to protect his kingdom. And then a perfect example is, I'll read it, where it says, so at this point, David's in the wilderness. He's moving from different places in the wilderness. He's now in Ziph. Saul rose up in Ziph, and he's searching all the clans through, the tribe of Judah is deep. We know that David is a part of the tribe of Judah. So Saul is going to every clan all throughout the area of where they said he was last to identify David and kill David. But verse 27 gets to the point of, it says, but a messenger came to Saul saying, hurry and come, for the Philistines have invaded the land. Therefore Saul returned from pursuing David and went against the Philistines. So they called that place the Rock of Escape. I will say, I feel like there's been some reenactments of like David running and hiding. I know he was real nervous. That's what I'm gonna say, which is why they call it the Rock of Escape. He's probably running out of places, right? But God is amazing. He sets it up to where Saul got to get back. And that allows for David to then go into another stronghold, another word for a place to be held up in, a place to hide. And it's called Engedi, Engedi. But that's where it stops there with 1 Samuel 24. And then what I'm not 24, 23, my bad. But what I'm going to do is read all of 24 because it's powerful. Ain't no way around it. I might read all of 24 and 25 to kind of wrap up our time together. But I'm going to read 1 Samuel chapter 24, verse 1. Now it happened when Saul had returned from following the Philistines that it was told him, saying, take note, David is in the wilderness of Engedi. Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. So he came to the sheepfolds by the road where there was a cave, and Saul went in to attend his needs. He uses in the restroom. David and his men were staying in the recesses of the cave. Then the man of David said to him, this is a day of which the Lord said to you, behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand, that you may do to him as it seems good to you. And David arose and secretly cut off a corner of Saul's robe. So while Saul is attending to his needs, David in stealth mode again, cut off his robe. Now it happened afterward that David's heart troubled him because he had cut Saul's robe. And he said to his man, the Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, to stretch out my hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord. So David restrained his servants with these words and did not allow them to rise against Saul. And Saul got up from the cave and went on his way. David also arose afterward, went out of the cave, and called out to Saul, saying, my lord the king. And when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth and bowed down. And David said to Saul, why do you listen to the words of men who say, indeed, David seeks your harm? Look, this day your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you today into my hand in the cave, and someone urged me to kill you. But my eye spared you, and I said, I will not stretch out my hand against the Lord, my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. So I'm going to pause here. When you read, you'll notice like differences between what's uppercase and lowercase. In this regard, lordship, Saul is a king, is lowercase lord. Customarily, David is speaking from a place of humility. He is not putting Saul on the same level as God. But I think that's very important to notice when you're reading. You'll always see all capital letters for the Lord God, and then you'll see the lowercase Lord every now and again based on relationship with man to woman. But wanted to say that because I was at verse 10 when I saw that. Verse 11, moreover, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand. For in that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you. Know and see that there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand, and I have not sinned against you, yet you hunt my life to take it. Let the Lord judge between you and me, and let the Lord avenge me on you, but my hand shall not be against you. 13. As the proverb of the ancient says, wickedness proceeds from the wicked, but my hand shall not be against you. After whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom do you pursue? A dead dog, a flea? Therefore, let the Lord be judge and judge between you and me, and see and plead my case and deliver me out of your hand. So he is rubbing it in thick about, I wish you no harm. I ain't nobody you need to be worried about right now. Because I could have, I should have, I didn't. And everything you think you've heard to believe, those are lies. Turn it down, ma'am. So I paused for a minute at 15, continuing on verse 16. So it was when David had finished speaking these words to Saul that Saul said, is this your voice, my son David? And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. Then he said to David, you are more righteous than I, For you have rewarded me with good, whereas I have rewarded you with evil. And you have shown this day how you have dealt well with me. For when the Lord delivered me into your hand, you did not kill me. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him get away safely? Therefore, may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. And now I know indeed that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Therefore, swear not to me by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants after me, and that you will not destroy my name from my father's house. So David swore to Saul, and Saul went home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. That was worth the read to me because it allowed for Saul to receive peace of mind about how his mind was just, it went to a whole nother level when the Lord clearly told him, I will not establish my kingdom with you and your house forever. Because you, right? And again, he's hearing people say things and he's feeding off of that. He's angry, he's upset, he's not receiving what he needs to receive. And then we get to this point of where David and him are having a much needed, well overdue conversation after something significant happens to where Saul realizes, yeah, if he really did want to kill me, I wouldn't even be here no more. So that vulnerability or a moment of opportunity of vulnerability allows for peace to be between the two of them and a covenant to be established, which was really dope, which is why I wanted to read it. But the vulnerability with one another and them honoring God post that encounter was, again, it was a must read for me. So the last chapter that I'll be talking through, potentially reading some things on, is chapter 25. And this one is about a stubborn man named Nabal. Nabal is a hot mess. He's cruel. He is prideful. He is definitely, he got a big ego. He's feeling himself. He doesn't do right by his wife. And then we're at this point to where how chapter 25 starts is Samuel, high priest, he dies. All of Israel is very grieved by this. They're lamenting, and then they bury him in his home. That is the first verse of chapter 25. Then it transitions into us learning about Nabal. Nabal is very rich, so it makes sense that he a little pompous, you know what I mean? But it ends up being to his downfall. The the short long of this story, y'all know I can talk, but the short long of this story is Nabal has a lot of wealth, livestock, land, right? David's and his group of men are kind of on the outskirts. They are trying to make sure that there won't be any issues. And then they are inadvertently protecting what Nabal has because of where they're situated, because they're always ready for war. There's peace, but they always ready to go get done what needs to get done. He's still continuing to serve the king, King Saul. David still continuing to be honorable. But David tells a group of his men, hey, y'all go talk to Nabal. 10 young men roll up on Nabal in verse 5 of chapter 25, and they greet him. And he's like, greet Nabal in my name, because Nabal will know who David is, right? And then explain to him that it's peace, right? We mean peace. And we know that you have these things. We're not here to harm or take nothing away. But if you have favor on us, you know what I mean? Like, let us have some of what you have, right? Because you got it like that. Now, instead of Nabal saying, oh, snap, David, yeah, I know about David. You know what? Y'all are offering protection too? I got you. You have this, that, and the third. Nabal he just kind of hit this, who David? I don't know no David. Jesse, who, what? Right? So he says it and does it in a way that's very disrespectful. The man go back to David and give him a report. He ain't offer us nothing but heartache. He was talking trash. He said, you ain't nobody, right? So the report is given by the young man back to David. And David said, oh, so that's what we doing. Y'all gird up. Get ready. Because we can take it. You know what I mean? So David is like, he's going to be disrespectful. Let's go. We cutting it all down and we're taking it. Long story short, Nabal has a wife named Abigail. In verse 3, It acknowledges her as a woman of good understanding, beautiful, despite her husband being a harsh man towards her. He didn't do right by her, y'all. But she wasn't there when the conversation was had. She hears the word of what happened by somebody else that was always, it's always somebody watching and listening, right, in the household. And it was like, hey, this what happened. We scared. Right? Because you know who David is, right? So she quickly gets the things while Nabal, I think Nabal was out. He was away somewhere, probably having a good time. But when she heard what happened, she know who David is. She know what David and his men are about. She gets everything that needs to be gotten based on what he asked for in the first place, right? Here's a sheep. Here's some food. Here, here's what you need to continue to be comfortable and fight these battles, because y'all are always moving and on mission, and you ask for hospitality. I got you. If I was there, I don't think it would have went down the way it went down. Please don't do what I know you're gonna do. And David had it in his heart. Everything that Nabal owns, including his seed, since he was disrespectful and did not listen to something that is literally like a king's command, we cutting it off. So that's how 25 reads all the way through. But Abigail rides out through the night with all of the things she gathered for the household. And she bows before David and she just says, look, I'm so sorry. My husband is a scoundrel. You know what his name means. Like, this is just how he moves. But please don't do no harm. Like, if you have it in your heart, right? She's as humble as they come, laying it all out. I brought you all of these things. If you can please, don't kill my kids. Like, that's kind of what it was given when you read 25 specifically, verses like 22 through. You'll see her face down, bow in humility, like pleading to David, please. And David was like, girl, you came right on time, because if you would have came in the morning, it would have been too late. And we would have already, like, everything took it. But long story short, he was like, I'll have mercy, right? Since you did what you did a good thing. Thank you. I'll have mercy. So she goes back to her husband, Nabal, and she's assuming Nabal is going to be receptive, because she now knows, oh, David was going to come to kill us and take everything we have, including our children. Your whole household is about to be eliminated because of your pompousness, right? You've been disrespectful. Y'all, instead of Nabal being humble, heart-hearted, he like, whatever. And in that moment, God just straight up said, finish him. He like heart attack. I don't know what it was, but Nabal fell dead, y'all. And it literally said, verse 38, then it happened after about 10 days, because he had time to get it together. That's the sad part. His wife came back and told him everything. He sat on that thing for 10 days unbothered, probably still drinking, having a good time, being rude. And God said, oh yeah, he not going to change his heart. But it said the Lord struck Nabal and he died. So Nabal's death allowed his whole household, everything he would have ever known, to be spared. Because the Lord was like, yeah, let me just go ahead. David heard that Nabal was dead. And then that's when he kind of goes into the mode of like, you see how God repays evil for evil? I'm glad we on God's side. And I'm sorry, Abigail, you going through what you going through, but you a good woman. You know what? If you need to be under the cover and protection, he didn't ask her. He essentially was like, hey, y'all go tell her, I'm going to propose to her. She going to be my wife. So Nabal's wife, Abigail, is a widow, not for long, because David goes, proposes, takes her as his wife, servants, all of that. So wealth grows, no harm comes to, the children and folks before. Shout out to God being merciful and David being obedient. And then it wraps up with David also taking another woman as another wife. I just kind of, as I read this, I'm not going to flex like as a woman. I was like, man, it's hard out here for women. But yeah, that's how chapter 25 ends, y'all. I will say the way the women had to survive in those days, yeah, it made sense that I was meant to be born in the late 1900s. But that's me joking, but being for real, for real. But they did what they had to do, and or they did what they were told to do. But it wraps up with Saul So you remember the previous chapter, Saul and David, they reconcile, they make peace, they establish covenant. But at the end of 25, y'all, I guess because David never came back home, who knows? Saul ended up remarrying David's first wife, Michal, to another man, somebody named Palti, son of Laish from Gallim. But that's how 25 ends. Appreciate those who have continued to journey along. I pray that this has been something that's edifying. I pray that it sparked conversation. It's encouraged you to read and see for yourself. But please continue to make a great remainder of this wonderful Domingo, Sunday, and making an even better week coming up. Again, as I stated earlier, let's keep our babies, our friends, our family, our cousin, them, anybody that serves in any capacity outside of the comfort of whatever a household looks like, in our thoughts and prayers. And I really do hope that this year is a wonderful year for K through 12 folks in the county we are in as they start a new school year on tomorrow. Thank y'all in advance for keeping my family and I in your thoughts and prayers. Continue to make it a great day. And Lord willing, next weekend we'll be at it again to continue through First Samuel, starting at chapter 26. Take care, everybody.